Video on, ma'am. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. A warm welcome to you all to Vigyan Prasar's webinar series on the theme Each for Equal Promoting Women in STEM. Through today's session, we aim to explore the field of translation research and its implementation of the outcomes through eyes of women scientists, researchers, and students who pursue them. For today's session, we feel extremely privileged to introduce our audience to our esteemed guest, Dr. N.R.A. Banerjee. We extend a warm and heartfelt welcome to you, ma'am. We also have with us Dr. Nakul Parashar, Director Vigyan Prasar, who has been guiding us throughout in all our endeavors. We welcome you, sir. We also welcome the large group of women scientists, researchers, science teachers, students, and all other people attending this webinar through YouTube and Facebook handles of ISTI and Vigyan Prasar, where it is being broadcasted live. For setting in the context of the webinar, we have with us Dr. Kinkini Das Gupta Mishra, Senior Scientist at Gender and Digital Communication Programs of Vigyan Prasar. She has been the torchbearer in the whole process of conducting these webinar series. Before I invite Dr. Mishra for throwing up light upon the concerns of this webinar, I would like to remind our audience to avail this golden opportunity to interact directly with the speaker after the session by posting their questions and queries related to the talk in the comment section by using the hashtag each for equal. So I request Dr. Mishra to proceed with the session.
Thank you, Tusha. A warm welcome to you all. Good afternoon. The global science community has recognized that a gender gap in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medicine has existed for many years. And recently, there has been an ongoing effort to promote and inspire women and girls to participate in STEM fields. And research has also indicated that gender inequality is partially due to unsupportive cultures that negatively impact the advancement of a woman's career. As a result, women are underrepresented at the education, research, faculty, and leadership levels. With this webinar series on Each for Equal, promoting women in STEM, which is being organized by Vigyan Prasar regularly, and we started this from the month of July 2020, we bring together on platform all the women researchers, scientists, by providing our audience with an opportunity to see the research world through their eyes and interact with them. They are the role models for future generations, brilliant and committed in the most competitive fields of research. And these laureates illustrate the remarkable contribution that women can bring to science. With this, we at Vigyan Prasar, a national level science communication organization of Department of Science and Technology, we attempt to sensitize the young scholars, the young college students, particularly the young girls, and about the cutting edge research and motivate them to take up research careers. And this webinar series aims to deliberate on the issues in increasing the participation of women in STEM disciplines and discuss its opportunities and challenges. Nowadays, translational research is an emerging STEM, it's an emerging STEM field, and it's a tool for applying basic biological concepts to techniques that address critical medical needs. In simpler words, we can say that it is a bench to bedside bridge. To know how women and young researchers can contribute to translational research, we have with us today Professor N.R.A. Banerjee, a renowned name in translational research. Professor Banerjee is currently a senior professor of zoology, University of Calcutta, and leads the Translational Outcomes Research Group that focuses on immunobiology and regenerative medicine, drug discovery studies, and basic research. She's going to speak on translational outcome research and from a gender perspective. We are very proud and privileged to have you, ma'am. We are also extremely honored to have with us our director, Dr. Nakul Parashar, under whose able leadership we have been driving the agenda of science popularization, communication, and extension in the country. We have been really taking forward the entire mandate of science communication popularization in a large scale with wider dissemination through different programs and activities. Before we proceed with the lecture, I invite Dr. Nakul Parashar, Director Vigyan Prasar, to deliver the welcome address. Over to you, sir. you are muted.
Sorry, my apologies. Very warm welcome, a very warm good afternoon, especially here as the temperatures have started to soar here in Delhi, and especially a very warm welcome to Professor Inare Banerjee for having accepted our invitation to, deliver today's lecture of the series of webinars that are that Vigyan Prasar has been organizing for past few months. In this chain, we've had a number of leading personalities, and Dr. Professor Inare Banerjee has been associated with Vigyan Prasar for quite some time, especially in our scope. Scope stands for science, communication, popularization, and extension in Bengali. And she was very kind enough to have accepted our invitation to be the editor of one of our special issues of Vigyan Katha, which had rave reviews, which was liked. And I must tell you, Professor Banerjee, that because of your able leadership and the kind of editing that you've done for this whole issue of COVID special that we had carried out for Vigyan Katha, we've had a large number of, there's an increase in a large number of subscribers on behalf of Vigyan Prasar and on behalf of the entire set of those people who've taken up and have read and have started liking Vigyan Katha. The entire credit of it, I would certainly pass it on to you. Thank you so much for being with us. We truly appreciate it, and also want to thank you for having accepted our invitation, especially when Dr. Kinkini Dasgupta Mishra spoke about people whom we wanted. And when we all talked about you, there was a unanimous decision. We said this would be a great opportunity to have you here, and I'm sure all those who are listening to this entire webinar, while it is being streamed live, while it is being done here on Zoom as well, I'm sure all of them would be very very much eager to hear you, ma'am. And on a subject that has been very close to all of us here at Vigyan Prasar. We have been working relentlessly under the leadership of Dr. Kinkini Das Gupta Mishra. Here we have a philosophy: for anybody who leads a project, we all rally behind that person. And under the able leadership of Dr. Kinkini Das Gupta Mishra, we've been able to organize these webinars successfully for quite some time. And this has really helped. The kind of feedback that we have received is enormous, and I'm very sure and very very confident that today's lecture of yours would certainly incite a lot of hope, a lot of passion and encouragement, and a sense of empowerment will certainly get unleashed after this lecture of yours gets delivered today amongst the entire community that looks forward in empowering the women, particularly in STEM. STEM fine, STEMM fine. For me, who comes from scientific publishing, for us, both of them stands for STM, which means scientific, technical, and medical. So I was a little, I've been watching them and I've been seeing all these M's getting added, but all these M's will get only fructified if in a country like us, where we have a huge women folk who are curious and who want to get into science, and it is our responsibility that we come forward, take it forward, and with due passion, with due encouragement, and with due zeal and mission. If we can do this, we'll certainly be able to live up to the expectations of Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar, and would get our women folk to that level. And we all know people like you, Professor Banerjee, people like Kiran Majumdar, Shaw, Indra Nui, of your stature. They all are important pillars in empowering and showing and leading by example how important it is, and how powerful it is for us to empower these young women, to take them forward. So as role model, we salute you, ma'am, for having accepted our request to deliver today's lecture. And I'm sure Dr. Kinkini Das Gupta Mishra would agree with me that we are all very eager, excited to hear you speak. So there's a lot that we can go on and on and on on, but I think I'll have to pause it here because I shouldn't be stepping between you and the eager audience that is waiting to hear you. On this note, thank you once again, Professor Banerjee. Thank you, Dr. Kinkini Das Gupta Mishra. Thank you, Tusha, and the entire team for organizing this. You have all our support and encouragement to do this. So wish you all the best once again. Thank you so much. Jai Hind and Jai Bharat. Namaskar.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your kind and encouraging words and for your insightful thoughts. I mean, that's so motivating and inspiring. Thank you once again. I now invite the speaker of today's webinar, Professor NRA Banerjee. Actually, she doesn't need any further introduction, but I would just like to mention one point that she is the only woman who was awarded a DSc in zoology in Calcutta University at the age of 46. And so that is worth mentioning, and this is where the presence of women and she's the first lady awardee to be awarded the DSc in zoology from University of Calcutta. So we welcome you, ma'am, and we will not take much time to introduce you while you speak. I think you will be talking about your research and your involvement in associations in the subject. And over to you, ma'am. We invite you to deliver the lecture. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I already feel so welcome, and I know this is Dr. Parashar's extraordinary ability to put one to ease. So wherever he is, he creates this orbit of comfort. So I thank you, sir, for that once again. It was absolutely my privilege to work on that COVID issue, and the kind words that you have said makes it all the more worthwhile. And thank you, Dr. Kinkini Dasgupta Mishra. We have been talking about a lot of things, and ultimately, to culminate in this lecture is my extraordinary honor and privilege. So with that, I shall share my screen and begin my talk, because I think time is a little scarce, because I have a lot of things to talk about, and I hope that my audience will kindly bear with me and let me talk about whatever I have to talk about. So I begin the lecture. How do I? Yeah, I can make this small. Okay. Yesterday was Antarjatik Matribhasha Dibosh, and to speak in one's mother tongue is one's absolute delight. So I would like to begin my talk by acknowledging what Dr. Parashar has already started with, that unless there were people like Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Kadambini Devi, Rabindranath Thakur, Vivekananda, Swami Vivekananda, all the people who have made Bengal a rich field of culture, Acharya Prafulla Chandra Rai, Professor Meghnad Saha. So I am simply carrying on what they had started. And I think we will talk a little bit about the 6 points that I have in this slide here. And we will know that Bengal has been leading in women's education, and we shall touch upon that. সুতরাং আমি অত্যন্ত কৃতজ্ঞ আমার উত্তরসূরিদের কাছে আমাকে এই সুযোগ দেওয়ার জন্য. I translate that I am indebted to my predecessors of the land that has been enriched by their thoughts for having given me this opportunity to stand where I am. Once again, the webinar series Each for Equal, I think both the words each and equal are very loaded, and I shall try and elucidate that point through my lecture. Promoting women in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medicine. I will share my experiences, how I got where I got, and how we as women should continue to break the glass ceilings, because we shouldn't let anybody tell us that this is it. There is a cap, there is a ceiling above your head. We have to smash that and forge ahead. So this is sort of the tone of today's talk that I have been invited to give. It is translational outcomes research and gender in STEM, and this is my perspective. I am NRI Banerjee, and I have been, lucky that I have had a PhD in biotechnology and a DSc in zoology. I have been educated in premier girls institutions, and I shall be talking about them at the end. But today, I am representing University of Calcutta Department of Zoology and Translational Outcomes Research Group, the work that it does, and the immunology and regenerative medicine based research that we do. I have divided translational outcomes research is and what we do in the immunobiology and regenerative research, regenerative medicine research lab. In the second part, I shall be talking about outreach programs, because without taking it to people who are not inside the lab, people who are not privileged to be in the university, people who are funding the research that we are doing, our work is never complete. So outcomes, outreach programs that my lab participates in is the second part of the talk. In the third part of the talk, I should be talking about leadership in higher education and how women can bring about women are and can bring about a sea change. Sort of the breaking the paradigm of status quo is what my third part of the lecture would be. The trials and tribulations that I have faced and that I wear as a talisman. And the last part of the lecture would be each for equal, where I would try and talk a little bit about, through my experiences, what could be a way forward. So the translational outcomes research, what is it? It is a multidisciplinary integration. It is a multidisciplinary integration of basic research, patient-oriented research, and population-based research. The long-term aim is to improve the quality of public health. It also has two parts. One is the process by which discoveries at the lab scale are transduced, so to speak, and this is something that we shall discuss later on. It has to have certain changes in order to be scaled up and put to use, which is conventionally called the bed-to-bedside translation. And that translation part concerns research aimed at enhancing the adoption of the best practices. So we discover, we tinker around with it, we apply it, we validate it by the application, and we come back again to the storyboard to do the changes to make it better. The outcomes research is to understand the end results of particular healthcare practices and interventions. That is, after translation, what happens, how best we can tweak it is the outcomes research. So whether what we are doing is right is what is found out through the outcomes research. And this picture sort of sums up, this was made by one of my postdocs, Dr. Alpana Dave. She has very nicely summed up what I kept talking in my lab discussions, is that on the one hand, we are the scientific community, we are the scientific community and the higher education torchbearers in the university. Then there is the community of which we are a part. And then there is the science and technology part of the higher education. And these have to be brought together under the purview of academics, which we represent, the policy that must change by our experiences, by our achievements, by our failures. And to take it to a sustainable level, because academics is usually sponsored by the people in a democratic platform. Policy is what when something is discovered in an esoteric field, when it is translated, taken to the people, how the community responds to it determines the policy. And industry is the important third arm, which gives it the sustainability by generating wealth, employment, capacity building, and so on. So this is basically what we do, the bench to bedside. And outcomes research This has a lot of things in it. To cut it very short, look at the overlapping zones, and you'll see that the quality measurement, what we are doing, sometimes we generate knowledge for the sake of generating knowledge. That knowledge sits for maybe 300 years, such as in Euclidean geometry, for somebody to come and find a use for it. So translation may not always be the means to an end. We generate knowledge because we feel the, in Bengali we say tagid, that inner urge that we need to generate, explore, understand, ask questions. But that needs to improve our quality of life. So outcomes research, health services research, and comparative effectiveness research together gives the real world effectiveness, how effective it is, value of care, whether what we are doing is the right thing to do, quality measurement, what we are doing, how we can do it better, and quality improvement. So in a word, in a nutshell, what we do is we connect the dots. We connect the dots by, sorry, let me go back. We connect the dots by connecting universities, the laboratories in the universities, the community that funds us, for who we do the work that we do, the human resource development. We train students in undergraduate, postgraduate, PhDs, postdocs. We generate wealth and we generate knowledge. And ultimately, whatever we do cannot ignore the traditional knowledge of this old, ancient land with its own treasure trove of knowledge. So that traditional knowledge cannot be ignored. And I think the current government is doing an excellent job in resurrecting the pride in the ancient Indian wisdom, which has, to a large extent, being relegated to, not as great, which is a kind of an irony. So in a way, through this slide, maybe I would like to send the message of decolonization. It is high time that we decolonize our thinking, especially in science and technology practices and higher education, by acknowledging and understanding the traditional knowledge that we are privileged to be a part of by being born in this land. This is how we do it. This is the Department of Zoology. In my laboratory, which is Immunobiology and Regenerative Medicine Laboratory, and under the purview of translational biology or translational outcomes research, we do drug discovery studies using natural products. We use phytochemicals from apple and strawberry, from different kinds of berries. This is a bioactive product. Curcumin from, what is the Bengali? In Bengali, we call holud or haldi, turmeric. The English term is turmeric. It's a bioactive compound. We use guar extracts, the bean extracts that we do. Harjor is a creeper. The punarnaba that we use for regenerative medicine. Pan, which is taken as a recreational food but has excellent functional food attributes. Chalkumro, which is Benincasa species, and Cypanculity. This is Phascolosoma arcuatum, which is a littoral belt little annelid. It's an invertebrate. So from all these biodiversity resources, the natural products, we try and find compounds of therapeutic use. Regenerative medicine, here we use stem cell-based therapy, tissue engineering for the two organ regeneration that we do currently in our lab. One is lung, one is kidney. We have the probiotic therapy, which we use in inflammatory bowel disease, which otherwise does not have a cure. And regeneration using planaria. Planaria is a small little invertebrate animal, a few millimeters long. It's a simple diploblastic animal, and yet it has the power of infinite regeneration. So we try to learn from the planaria what evolution has conserved in it, that we can translate into our own organs in the regeneration of the lung and the kidney and just about all the different organs, if only we could harness the power of the planaria. So under zoology, this is another opportunity for doing translational research. Antibody development, we use camelid antibody again under zoology, different animals of the camelidae family and the sharks. For some reason in evolution, they have small nano-sized antibodies. Here in our lab, we have developed a novel engineered antibody against alkaline phosphatase, which is a pro-inflammatory enzyme, alpha amylase, another pro-inflammatory enzyme, and asthma-specific IgE for therapy and also for diagnosis. In DNA barcoding, we identify different organisms, not only morphologically, especially in museum specimens and in ancient specimens, which get destroyed over time. It is difficult to understand them by their phenotypic attributes or even with their anatomical attributes, even if we were to dissect it. But DNA barcoding is something that is objective. We can do it with a very small amount of sample, and this helps in understanding and tagging through identification attributes, biodiversity that we have with us. And the last, restoration of the Zoological Museum. Right now, even though I practice immunobiology and molecular biology and regenerative medicine and all the reductionist, fashionable technology-based subjects, but we cannot ignore that without the animals that teach us all this, without celebrating them, we cannot really go very far. And we are fortunate that Department of Zoology, University of Calcutta has a century-old museum of zoology, which I have been honored to restore and resurrect. So our research areas are, for the people who are listening, I will not go very, very technical, but overall, inflammation and degeneration lie at the center of most of our ailments. The ailments that we study are asthma. This is idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, lung fibrosis. This is chronic kidney disease. This is inflammatory bowel disease, rheumatoid arthritis, peritonitis, atopic dermatitis. And how do we do this? And this nice little flow chart has been made by my scholar, Shinjini Mitro, and she has very nicely captured the essence of what we do. So by this color coding, you will see that these are the areas where we use nanoparticles as a strategy for therapy and diagnosis. The pink is where we use the antibody therapy. The blue is where we use the stem cell therapy. The green is where we use the IBD, and the phytotherapy encompasses almost everything. And the phytotherapy is what we are going to talk about first. And very quickly, I will go through the slides. These are natural products that we use, natural products whole and natural products fractionated by various solvents. And we try and look for like a needle in a haystack. Only if you have a magnet, the magnet of knowledge that will illuminate the haystack, and even without illuminating the haystack, the magnet will attract the needle to you. So provided it is made of a ferrous compound. And this is what we do with the natural products. We do bioprospecting, that is understanding what kind of bioactive resources there are, minus the exploitation, because growing local, eating seasonal, especially in the light of the COVID, this is something that is being talked about in detail. Immune boosting, although immune boosting really doesn't happen through any one particular food, but natural products by and large, especially seasonal products, have been traditionally known to prevent diseases, which are also seasonal. So this is what we do, that we find that a powerful bioactive compound in the natural products. These are the phytochemicals, and we use it through a process called drug repurposing or drug repositioning or drug discovery. So repurposing and repositioning will mean if there is a drug that has been discovered and found to be efficacious against a particular disease, it could also possibly be made efficacious against a similar disease. So here we are working on inflammatory and degenerative diseases where etiology, that is the causative mechanism, is somewhat overlapping. So this is what we do. And these are the different compounds that we use, the physetin, the guar gum nanoparticles, the hard jor, and these are the diseases that we use it in. We have very good results from the guar-gum nanoparticle, which is a surface functionalized nanoparticle and has been found to be extremely useful in atopic dermatitis, which is idiopathy unknown. Sometimes we have inflammation of the skin. It could be because of heat, it could be because of stress, because of a certain drug use, because of hormonal changes. And this particular sugar seems to be working here, possibly through the macrophages. The physatin, which comes from eating berries, the strawberries and apples, this particular bioactive compound has been found to be extremely efficacious in asthma, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, peritonitis, and atopic dermatitis in different formulations. Hardjor, which is a creeper found in our northeastern hilly states, has been extremely efficacious in rheumatoid arthritis. We also use curcumin, which has been used in asthma and IPF. We have used punornoba, which is used in acute kidney injury and chronic kidney disease. And you may know that in case of kidney degeneration and inflammation of the kidney, there is really no cure other than management. So if a traditional plant can regenerate the kidney, which is what we have found through our work, it will be a breakthrough. And this is where we are working with it. Pan extract. Pan is a recreational food, but pan also has been shown to have enormous antioxidative potential. And funnily, of the different kinds of pan that we have studied, some pan varieties have been found to be pro-inflammatory, whereas others have been found to be anti-inflammatory. One moment, please. পুচু একটু এই দরজা দুটো বন্ধ করে দিবি, বড্ড আওয়াজ হচ্ছে। I'm sorry, this is something that we cannot do anything about. Wherever we are, when the sound is very loud, I know the mic catches it and it is very difficult for the listeners. And the last is, these are these intertidal animals which were gone from the Sundarban for quite some time. And one of our the founder of Marine Biology Research Laboratory, Professor Amulesh Choudhury, whom we lost to COVID this last December, he had brought me the Phascolosoma arcuatum, which is a siponculid, and it is a minor phylum of the annelids. And he said they had left the Shagor Island of Sundarban, but they have come back. And what we were doing with them is we were extracting certain polysaccharides from it, and they have been used against inflammation with very good results. So you see, all these little life forms, they have knowledge and they have useful materials in them. And as biologists, it is our job to look for them and put them to some use, not to exploit but to conserve. So this is a busy slide, and I will just take 1 second to go through it, just to give you an impression of what we do in the lab. Because at the end of the lecture, when I'm going to tell you about whatever we are doing, why would you even believe me unless I show you this is what we do? And each model takes about a month and a half to get all the data out of it. And we use the non-human rodents as our materials. And here we must say that however much human we are, these diseases do give them pain. But in return for their lives, they are giving us this very valuable data, which is shown in the slide. These are the challenge regimens. These are the different kinds of administration regimens with we call it the novel chemical entity, which will become drug later on, or a nutraceutical supplement. And then we measured the various disease parameters. In physatin, we use it in 5 different diseases, as you can see. So the same source is good for 5 different diseases with different formulations and different modes of administration. The guar-gum nanoparticle, as you can see, these are the disease models. We induce atopic dermatitis with 0.8% oxazolone and peritonitis with 3% sodium thioglycolate. And after topical or intraperitoneal introduction of our drug units, we measured the disease parameters. We use curcumin for IPF and asthma. We use hardjor in rheumatoid arthritis, which we induce with collagen. We use punornoba for the acute kidney injury and chronic kidney disease models, which are induced with cisplatin. Apart from this, we use regenerative medicine, where This is a branch where not only the symptom measurement is attempted, but also induction of new cells to resurrect the power of replacement, regrowth, and renewal is what is explored. To do that, we use stem cell therapy, and the stem cells from the different niche that harbor the stem cells. We also use probiotics, which work with our cells, the immune cells of our body, and the structural cells of the tissues to reverse the damage of the body. So they are the commensals. They have co-evolved with us. And here in translational medicine, we are trying to understand the signals that are used by the colony of bacteria that coexist with us within our tissues. So that is what we do, and it is an extremely interesting therapy. And probably in COVID, we hear a lot of things like the large repertoire of human leukocytic antigen that has been working for in favor of the Indian population. Likewise, the commensals that we harbor through our gene makeup as well as through our food habits have also probably been protecting us. So the stem cell therapy is where we try to understand how the biotic and the abiotic factors induce cells to regenerate, and how damaged and old and diseased cells may be replaced by the body by increasing their turnover of the healthy and primordial cells. Tissue engineering. In tissue engineering also we have used guar nano, where we grow the cells. In the probiotic therapy, we have used the probiotics not only for curing the inflammation, which is not possible in normal clinical management practices. One uses antacids, maximally antacids, and change of lifestyle. But here, these three. This is a combinatorial probiotic. These are three little bacteria which work in our favor, and not only do they control the inflammation, but they also regenerate the gut cells. We use planaria to understand what is it that makes them immortal and how they repair their wound, how they survive despite 6 major extinctions having happened on planet Earth, but they continue. So we try to learn from them. We develop antibodies. This is a single domain antibody. This is a nanobody, which gives it an enormous scope to be used without side effects, because when the antibodies are larger, then they tend to elicit other side effects, other systemic side effects such as edema. We have already generated from the camel the nanobodies that evolution had endowed them with. This particular nanobody has been engineered by the phage. So we have used the camel, we have used the E. coli, which is the bacteria, we have used the phage, a virus, to express it for us. And in case of the IgE, we have used the mouse to generate the ova-specific IgE for asthma. Now, this DNA barcoding is employed to understand beyond the morphology the identity of the animal, and we came in contact with this particular animal, the tarantula, because one of our journalist friends brought it for us, and then the rest 7 different specimens were either provided by the local councillor or by the farmer who came in contact with it, by students. So this is again a kind of outreach and translation. This had caused a lot of distress amongst the population, and there was a lot of rumor that people were dying, and these were very aggressive spiders. Suddenly they have surfaced from somewhere. So it is nothing like that. We have identified it, and the identification process has also been employed elsewhere that I will come to. And this is just to let you know what we do with all the findings. We publish them, and by publishing them, we bring it to the notice of the scientific world that this is the work that we are doing. So with that, not everybody has access to technical scientific journals. So we also give our story to the media who publishes it and brings it to the notice of the common people who I feel that need to know, because they are the ones who are funding our research. And we also publish books. So with the DNA barcoding, I was just going to say that we had this old museum, and it was sitting there. The animals, the samples there were in a very bad state. There was a discontinuity because many people had retired and there was nobody to look after those animals. There was no inventory, which led me to the DNA barcoding, because the morphologically the animal was very badly decayed. Because it was not well preserved. There was no inventory, so there was no way of knowing who it was. So we went to DNA barcoding. So this technology exploration happened because of a need, because this zoological museum is our heritage. And in order to understand it, we need to use modern technology. So this slide sort of tells us what can be done. And here I pride myself that my team and I and my colleagues and the university, as well as many funding agencies, came to our rescue. And this is what it was, very drab and dreary and badly kept, because there was no resource. And then after we were done, this is what it had become. We have the portal www.zoologyhub.org, where you can find out the details of what we have over there. These are the different media is very important. These are the different media exposures of what we did. So I come to the end of this part of my talk. The mission and vision of what we do is we do drug discovery with natural products, cell-based therapy, and nanoparticles for finding cures to systemic and tissue-specific inflammation and degeneration. And of course, along with the knowledge, what is important is we also generate wealth. Engineering of various novel formats of naturally occurring antibodies and tissue engineering. And through it, we try to develop topical applications, nebulizer, diagnostics, cell-based therapy, and stem cell biology knowledge. And study of probiotics and nutraceuticals and compounds extracted from natural products and nanomaterials that are synthesized with it. This is also to give rise to knowledge and sustainable through wealth. The regenerative studies are done using Drosophila and Planaria, and this is the museum documentation work, and this is the end result. So this is what we, why we do what we do. So translational outcomes research, what I said at the beginning of the talk, is this encompassing all these endeavors to find cures to diseases, not only to find cures to diseases, but to actually translate them from the knowledge to usable products, and or knowledge to fill in the gaps of existing knowledge for somebody else to take it up later on and take it forward. These are my current lab members who have contributed to the work, and there are others also who have done it before them. I am especially grateful to Shinjini. She is the girl who has made this, put this lecture together. Without outreach, without taking it to the masses, we really are an isolated, little esoteric, erudite, arrogant scientific team of workers. We are not that. We take it through various meetings and programs, very much like the one that Vigyan Prasar has organized. Science communication is very, very important. And part of it is these meetings that were organized, and we are continuing it with certain webinars. We invite specialists to come and talk to us. Here you will see that a total personality development workshop was also done. I feel that along with the studies, such kind of exposures probably also need to be given. These are just certain glimpses of that. So I come to the third part of my lecture, which is leadership. In leadership, the kind of lacuna that exists in higher education and in leadership roles for women, there is a gender disparity. And part of it may be because of transactional leadership. So from the picture, you can see that the transactional leader basically tells you what to do. And with all due respect to my male counterparts, there is a certain degree of, you know, patronizing attitude that women are probably not good enough for certain roles. So there I come to the transformative leaders, both male and female, who walk the talk. And especially in higher education, a different kind of leadership is needed. Why? Because there is increasing, there is a sea change, there is increasing uh, uh, bulk of the work we do. There is increasing scrutinization by the public of the funding and how the funding is used. It is hugely competitive, as Dr. Dasgupta Mishra said at the beginning of the lecture. It is highly competitive. So to do that, one needs to understand the different needs of higher education and higher education institutes. The funding model is changing. Like I said, administrative processes may not always be supportive. There is increased public scrutiny. Like I said, I myself tell the story to the media, what we are doing. And in exchange, the common people would also ask questions like, you know, are you doing this right? Or why are you doing this? So we should be prepared to answer those questions. Then this, I think, is the most important thing in higher education, to hire and retain the right kind of staff. And why would the staff even like to be with your organization or institute? And so as teachers, we now wear different hats. And here I completely shift gear and come to that gender paradigm of STEM, is that we don't just teach in class and be done with it. We don't just evaluate examination scripts and be done with it. We mentor, and we are expected to generate revenue. There are skill building workshops, which are excellent initiatives, and therefore a traditional teacher now needs to wear different hats. And probably sometimes we also need to be these agony aunts, listening to our students and the kind of difficulties that they are going through. So that's a different kind of onus on a leader. This kind of leadership is not the heroic action of a few on the top. It is a collaborative partnership, and it is a shared responsibility. In the knowledge era, one needs to understand what is it that is that needs to be honed to develop leadership skills. Can leaders be designed or programmed is an important question that we ask. I would rephrase it somewhat and can say that leaders can be developed. So each one of us, each one of you are a potential leader. You have to recognize it within yourself. Recognizing is the first step, and then taking the right steps, taking the right directions, probably training in a certain way, learning to think in a certain way. But it is not one person's job. It is a whole ecosystem that needs to be changed. So what can we do differently and or better in preparing people for leadership in higher education? So that brings us to the challenges and how one can overcome the challenges. So there has to be a deep understanding of organization culture. I was talking about traditional knowledge. Who better than women, who, again, I'll switch to Bangla and say the dharok and bahok. Dharok ebong bahok means one who is the vessel that contains, and bahok is one who is a conduit. So I think women have a very important role, even if they are not in a so-called career. So leaders can emerge from anywhere, and for that one needs to understand here I'm talking about higher education institute, the organization culture, which is steeped in the local cultural practices of the people, and the building of the relationship that is very, very important. One has to understand there has to be a long-term vision. There has to be a collegiate working environment. In nurturing ecosystem, I think that is the most important part. And when we talk about gender, we cannot really ignore the angst and the concerns that is typically ours. Women, we have biological switching every month, and one really cannot ignore that. Childbearing and child rearing, going through menopause, all these things cannot really be ignored. So if you want a person to be productive, and here we are talking about women, so I, with all, enormous affection for all my boys and the young men who have trained under me, I will here talk mostly about the girl students and the girl scholars, and here, little things like the toilet, for example, female hygiene products, for example, understanding by colleagues and the leadership administration of that institute can go a long way in nurturing a girl or a woman. So we need to be honest. Integrity is a very, very important thing, and probably we need to think out of the box. We need to have those extra check boxes put in to accommodate the special needs of women. In terms of my own leadership experiences, I try to motivate and inspire. I don't always succeed. We sometimes come forth in a very different way than we think we are. However, certain kinds of behavior, certain kinds of honesty needs to come through. So organizing the team, I'm very happy to say that the I call them children, well, young men and women who have trained in the lab, who take part in translational outcomes research. They have their own thoughts on how we can do things differently. We need to improvise and innovate continuously, and for that, scientific temperament is very, very important. We cannot ignore our personal trials and tribulations. I have myself faced, discrimination, being a woman, but I think in a way that strengthens you. So a transformative leadership framework should probably be to empower others, and by being resourceful, by using the available resources judicially, by inspiring people, by walking the talk. Self-esteem and self-worth are very, very important, factors that probably women need to inculcate, and other women need to motivate men and women in, growing girls full of doubts, because society tells them to behave, or to their expectations are somewhat low. Just before this, I was talking to some of my interns who are in their second year of MSc, and they were saying that, ma'am, in our UG classes, sometimes also in our PG classes, whenever there's a male teacher, they will pass us and ask the boys. So there is these ingrained thought processes and bias that need to be countered. There has to be trust and respect. Of course, one needs to know what one is talking about, which is why I spent the first 25 minutes on talking in detail about the science that we do. There has to be appreciation. I think this appreciation is so important. It goes such a long way. And even if, maybe you've had a fight with your husband, or a fight with your mother, or your child has been misbehaving, but when you come to your workplace and you come with all that baggage, because that is what enriches you, I think appreciation is such an important thing. So I would end this section of my talk that relationship building, monitoring, being there, planning ahead for the rainy day. These are important attributes. So the last part, a few slides, I will try and talk about what the concept note of Vigyan Prasar is, the ways of enhancing and advancement of women in STEM. And here I have shared with you my own story. I have built a lab from scratch. I am grateful to the funding agencies that have funded me. I am grateful to my colleagues, to the team that has brought our work where it is. So I think one of the most important thing is be there. Matlab, lage raho, lege thako. So one of my old teachers used to say, daant kamde pore thako. So just, hold on to it. I think that is the number one message that I will give. Promoting gender equity. I think equal and equity, and each one of us, is, I think these are the most important words that we need to talk about, that it is each one of us what we can bring to the table. And to do that, one may not always be invited to the table. You understand that this is your capability, this is where you want to be, and you have to be slightly aggressive and you have to push forth that I think this is the best way forward and I ought to be heard. So I think in research, academia, and in scientific institutions, women to be heard need to be a little more visible and audible in a completely polite way. But as in biology, we say there are two kinds of animals. One are the conformers and one are the regulators. So the regulators are the homeotherms who can control their body temperature and can exist in all the seasons. And the poikilotherms, because their circulatory fluid, the temperature goes down, they have to take these hibernations and or estivation, summer sleep and winter sleep. So they miss out the summer season or the winter season, depending on who they are. Whereas the homeotherms have a larger window of activity. So I would tell the women to, take that balance between conformation and regulation. Number three, opportunities and challenges in science, technology, especially in startups and entrepreneurship. So here I'd like to say that I have founded a company, Bioconsort Research and Consulting and Research LLP. I have certain tie-ups with some other companies where the kind of services that we provide, or we provide like the sort of the cog in the wheel, not the wheel itself. So little parts that we provide. I think women in academics can think in those lines, that this is where we are good at, this is my strength, and play to your strengths. There are a number of opportunities in terms of funding that are provided by the government of India, by the international funding agencies, by private organizations. I know the Tatas, for example, they provide a lot of educational trusts that can help build up startup from the concept stage to the application stage. Gender in science and media, I think we have already talked about the publications and the visibility in the media. Advertise yourself, let people know what you're doing. I think that is important. Gender aspects in science policy. I think we'll go back to that slide where we talked about an ecosystem, where we talked about a nurturing place where women can grow. In terms of science policy, right now, there are a number of tools to address that. So use them. And improving the quality of lives of women through science and technology. This is what the first and the second part of my lecture was about. So I hope I have communicated to you some of what we do. And especially in the COVID scenario, let me tell you that the women harbor certain immune genes in our X chromosome, and that makes us stronger. So apart from science and technology promoting the quality of lives, we already have those extra attributes that evolution has given us. However, in my last 3 slides, I will talk a little bit about how women are perceived in STEM. There is an innate bias, as my bottom left-hand side slide shows you. It is self-explanatory. And in the bottom right corner of my slide, which is again self-explanatory, which shows that even if women opt for science subjects, often parents will say that it takes longer, the practical classes are longer, and coming back is a problem. I know certain states do not have enough women's higher education institutions, so the curve sort of goes down. This is something that I got from a 2016 little leaflet by 3 academies of India. This is slightly dated, and I'm sure the figures right now may have changed somewhat. But in the 2 tables here at the disciplines that women opt for and enrollment, and the gender enrollment ratio is much less for women. There is, that parity falls, especially in the science, technology, and engineering streams, as the slide shows you. Women working in various organizations, and you can see that while there has been a slight improvement in certain areas, but it is, still quite abysmal. I find myself being the only woman sitting at the table in such committees. So that is something of great concern, because unless we have a voice, um, uh, you know, a lot of it is not going to be done the way it should have been done. This is the fellowship of the different academies, and you can see that the percentage of women is so less. It's not even 10%. So this sort of sums up what I had to say. That to all the women there will be little, boys clubs, because they have been there before us, and they tend to, promote other boys. So the people, who reach where we can be heard. I think we should try our best for other voices to be heard. I think that's about it. This is just to give you a glimpse of the places that also made who I am. My school, Gokhale Memorial Girls School, which is a Brahmo school and had a different kind of thinking, taught us sewing and cooking along with education. Lady Brabon College, which is a premier girls college, UW and University of Calcutta, as well as Vivekananda College, where I worked, and all of it has shaped me to who I am. This is for the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. My interns made this slide, so I thought I will end my lecture with this slide. So thank you so much for listening in to me, and I do hope great things are in the offing for girls. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your insightful talk and excellent presentation. Taking a few words from your speech, Dharok Ebang Bahuk, the woman who holds and carries, or you said conduit for transactional research. I think you've properly, worded it. And they create and nurture the ecosystem, and what we require today is basically how to enrich that. And it was really nice. And in the knowledge era, we are generating knowledge, wealth, and absolutely, and it needs to be, and the whole effort is towards improving the quality of life. So, and it needs to be the traditional knowledge, it needs to be blended with the traditional knowledge, it needs to be acknowledged and understood properly. And I think who else, apart from women, who can be actually brought into for the entire gamut of understanding the traditional knowledge and blending it and taking.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I'll come back with some questions and answers, but now there are people waiting to ask you questions, and many of the questions we have received on the comment section, ma'am. So Tusha, I'm requesting Tusha to pick them up, and they will be asked to you, and you can answer them, ma'am.
That was indeed an enriching lecture, ma'am. And quickly moving towards the open discussion, we have with us on this platform Dr. Fayaz and Prabhat Ranjan, who would like to interact with the speaker directly. So I request Dr. Fayaz to convene.
So good afternoon, ma'am.
You put your camera.
Please tell me.
Good afternoon, ma'am. As we know that efficacy and toxicity of nanoparticle depend upon their size and shape. So for which method are suitable for synthesized monodisperse nanoparticle, and how its size and shape control?
You see, the particles that we work with, we do the biological validation of the particles. It is synthesized by our counterparts and collaborators in polymer sciences and chemical sciences division. So those will be more of a chemist's purview, what you just asked. But I can tell you that when we validate it, say for example in cell culture or for drug vehicle, or the drug itself, the formulations have to be different. And what we do in our lab in the translational part is we validate it that all those chemical libraries that you are generating, whether it is any good for any biological use. So your particular question is more for the chemists. If you give me those things, I can use it and tell you whether it is suitable for a particular purpose, and the kind of tweaking that you need to do to bring down, say, what you just asked, toxicity or permeability, especially for cell scaffolds, one needs to have these parameters fulfilled. So those that I can tell you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next question is from Prabhat Ranjan sir.
Hello, ma'am. Good afternoon. Ma'am, I have a technical question. It's related with severe sibling. So, how do you find that severe sibling is going to help in the population, especially when we consider science communication perspective? It's very difficult to bring the ethics part of into the communities. Can you please put some light on it?
I didn't quite understand your question. I'm sorry. What is it? This,
It is related with severe sibling. Severe sibling. You are working on a regenerative medicine, so translational health.
Sibling is what?
Savior, man, savior sibling. I think
The in vitro fertilization people are using for by in vitro fertilization people use to get the next sibling for treating the earlier siblings disease like anemia, beta thalassemia, etc.
Yeah.
So please elaborate it on communication perspective.
Okay. From what I understood of your question,
Yes.
so you are asking that from the embryo, that the cells that we take out and that we use for regenerative medicine purposes, especially for in case of twins, that it can be used. If that is the question that you're asking,
that is one
there is
aspect,
compatibility. One aspect, okay.
Yes. And second
the
aspect
communication is to tell the public that
right, and ethics.
They should not have ethics.
Yes.
Okay. So if I understood you correctly, then the banking of the cells, for example, from the cord blood,
right,
or a living sibling, especially for homozygotic twins, they can donate part of their bone marrow. For example, you can take from your the back, lower back, you can take out, aspirate the bone marrow, or you can from the sternum, you can take out the bone marrow. So, and from the bone marrow, there will be stem cells that can be used for these purposes. So there are various methods by which there is some degree of graft rejection also that might happen, but regeneration is it is a highly potential field that can be explored. Now, your main question, I think, is about the communications part, because people have these doubts in their minds that whether it is ethical, whether it is, even efficacious, if I have understood you correctly. So as a scientist, I can say that yes, it is efficacious. A large part of it is efficacious. And, like you donate your liver or your kidney or your blood, so little bit of bone marrow, if you can donate to somebody for regenerative medicine, then that does so much of good. And in terms of research, if one uses these cells, for example, cord blood cells, research has shown that there is very less teratoma formation. There is very less adverse effects of what the cells do in a interventional perspective. So they are very, very efficacious. And in terms of science communication, I think scientists and this is probably the most important part, is the cultural and the religious aspects of the people. And there, the interdisciplinarity is so important, because a scientist does not have a religion, does not have a culture. He is only looking for the truth. But when you take it to the people, you have to put it in such a way that it is acceptable. So that acceptability is steep in their sensitivity. And I think in science communication, these two aspects have to be very well researched and studied, so that when you communicate it, on the one hand, you do not lose the essence of science, but on the other hand, you are being totally empathetic to the person whom you are suggesting the intervention to. So
Okay,
that is a
thank you.
very important question.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now we will be taking the questions from our audience connected through various platforms. First question from Abhishek Ranjan. Does the development of appropriate disease-specific treatments require a detailed understanding of molecular and biological events?
Absolutely. Because the preclinical models that we use, so before taking it to the clinical level, before taking it to the humans, we see how the disease plays out with the cells, the non-cellular parts, the different signals in the tissue perspective in a similar but a different environment. So I think the analogous and the homologous elements of that model, say for example, you're using mouse, or you're using non-human primate, or you're using a fish, or you're using, say, xenopass. So a different animal definitely has different, the overall systems organization. It is the similar parts that we are looking at, and not just the similar parts, but the comparable parts that we are looking at. So here comes the empirical knowledge of the basics of cell biology and molecular biology. But when it comes to translation, one absolutely has to make those adjustments in the new system where it is being extrapolated. I hope I have been able to answer his question.
Yeah, the next question is from Dr. Rekha Kumari. She is an assistant professor. What are the opportunities for college students for translation research after the graduation?
Okay, so this is something that we need to explore, because translational biology or translational outcomes research still now is very, very esoteric. It is limited to very few labs. So as a culture, I think this has to be popularized in under Calcutta University or under any university in West Bengal. I am not aware that there is translational research practiced in the undergraduate sector. However, I think National Council for Science Museums, they are doing a lot of work in bringing this not just at the UG level, but from the school level, that innovation and the discovery spirit. And then what you can do is, you don't have to be an expert of everything. It's the age of collaboration. So if you are good at something, even if you have an idea, you can go somewhere where you can be trained. And I think such incubation centers are coming up in a big way. I think Department of Science and Technology itself is looking after a lot of incubation centers, and they encourage people. Not only, you don't really have to have all the necessary degrees and everything. Even if you have an idea, even if you like an entrepreneur, even if you are passionate enough about something and you can connect the dots, put things together. I think that kind of ecosystem is right now coming up in our country. Now, answering your direct question, in the undergraduate level, like I said, it is a culture that has to be brought up, and I think the API, the academic point index, that is used for promotion from assistant professor to associate professor and so on and so forth, or even for recruitment of faculty. This kind of collaboration is very much encouraged. And for skill building also, different, you can go to different places to train. Summer trainees, they are also, they have movement between the institutes. So I think translational outcomes research will very soon come up as a discipline. But even if it is not known, by a formal name, I think we are already practicing it in some form or the other.
I think your answer
Tusha.
answers. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
You're done with your questions?
Yeah, two more to go if
Okay,
if the
1
time
minute,
permits.
since ma'am is, no, I'll just interrupt you since ma'am
Yeah.
talked about this translational research. Ma'am, how can Vigyan Prasar facilitate the translational research outcomes that you are working on in the form of an outreach? Because as you've said, and we understand it's a challenging field of science, and what type of training program or what type of skill building, capacity building programs can be taken up by Vigyan Prasar to take it forward, and a large scale outreach activity? That is number one. Number two, you've been talking about connecting the dots with all the infrastructure and academies, as well as the students and the communities. So in Vigyan Prasar, we have been managing and implementing a digital platform, a web portal called India Science Technology Innovation Portal. Basically, that is a centralized repository of all research, technology, innovation, and also human resource. They've been all, we're trying to put them together on one single platform. And can that platform be utilized to get these, to connect the dots? And
Oh, absolutely. That's a
yeah,
stupendous question. That's a stupendous question. You know, what we say in systems biology is that it's a whole system, whether it is the body, it is a system where, so many humans and planet Earth together is a system, and everything is a system. And from what you just asked, I think Vigyan Prasar can be the critical node in that system, which can be that for that information throughput. So to answer the first question, the kind of work that is done in, say, my lab, which is, nanobiomedicine or biomedicine in a formal term. Now, this sort of work, it requires a lot of different kinds of skills. So what different kinds, and of course knowledge, and that is honed through, years. However, if we want to give it a sort of like a teaser, the kind of things that you need to do, and then one can take it from there. Vigyan Prasar can be instrumental in organizing these little workshops where there could be this inter-institutional collaboration to take up little parts of the training where they specialize. And one could have, and I think your portal can be an excellent sort of madhum. What would be the English for that? Medium for that, in facilitating, in the sense that somebody will be sitting in some academic laboratory with certain ideas and certain bodies of data. Now, if you organize some kind of a what should I say, like a little party or like a little carnival, where one showcases. I think you had that in last year in the near that Vishwa Bangla Convention Center, in Vishwa Bangla Convention, right? So there, if people are, they put in a like a fish bowl, they put their little ideas or what they have, and it's been sitting there only as publications, and nothing has been done with it. So the translational part or the outcomes part can be facilitated by Vigyan Prasar in a national and I think even transnational way, by getting all these people in touch with each other. So connecting the dots, I think, is something that can be very well done by.
Thank you so much. Tusha, you can continue with the rest of your question.
Okay, ma'am. Next question is from Karan. Do you think using animals for experiments should be banned?
Karan, I cannot see you, but this is
from YouTube,
something.
ma'am.
Okay, so he is listening. So
Yeah.
this is something that I have learned from one of my technicians who used to work for me in the University of Washington. She was a lady from China, and she was a Buddhist. And every time when she will be sacrificing the mice for me to harvest the tissue, she will be begging forgiveness from the mouse. And this is something that I have learned, and that I also try to tell my students, that even if we are doing it for science, we cannot absolve ourselves of the responsibility that however much humane we say, it is still causing them distress. So there is the question of emotion, and there is the question of right and wrong. So if I answer you from that side, I will say nobody has given the humans the right to, subject fellow creatures to such distress to find out knowledge. But as a scientist, we have no other way, because these poor creatures, they cannot file a habeas corpus in the Supreme Court and say that, Madam Banerjee is taking my liver for her regenerative medicine experiments. So, for the cause of science, we do it, but we try to do it following the 3 R's, that we conserve the resources, and every life is very, very precious. So we try to do it as judicially as we can. But yes, there is always that element of guilt.
This question is from Elimina. What is the challenges in the field of translation research as compared to the basic research?
Very good question. A very fundamental question. Yes, in basic research, you do your job. You make sure that you're doing a clean job. It is statistically significant. Your inference is clean, and you publish it. And that's it. So somebody reads it, if that person has a translational bent of mind or a resource, or it is good enough to take it forward, usually the industry will pick it up, they take it forward. However, in translational research, your work doesn't end there. Number one is your research query. That is the most important in translational research. Basic research, you gain knowledge for the sake of knowledge. But in translational research, you have to keep in mind that while we are exploring certain fundamental questions in science, it must have a sort of a measurable end to it. So in translational research, one of the first challenges is scaling up from the lab scale to a commercially viable scale. So their quality control is very, very important. And when you have to scale up, it's a different ball game altogether. For example, in your lab, you have a little funnel and a filter paper in which you're, filtering something. But if you have to do it at, say, huge scale, say a 3-story building where you have to make those medium, you cannot have a filter paper. There you have to sort of have some kind of a mechanism by which to centrifuge it and get down your pellet and your supernatant. So that part, I think, needs a lot of thinking out of the box. And then comes the real transduction part, in the sense that you have a bolus of knowledge. Here you have to go through certain regulatory clearances. You have to abide by certain guidelines. That is the next challenge. And the third most important challenge is to make it commercially viable. You have to again take another leap forward by absolute changing gears and probably even changing your the mode of transportation. So everything changes here. The paradigm with which you started your basic research now has to go through this rigor. And when it has to be translated, it has to be sustainable. So the economy, it comes in a big way. Environment comes in a big way. So whether it is feasible, whether it is viable, that is the last most important part of translational research. So you have to really have your goal set right, your resources pre-planned, and most importantly, you have to have these collaborators. And of course, you evolve as you grow. You don't always have the answers to all the questions right when you're beginning the work, but you have to be receptive and you have to look for suitable partners, and they will complement you, they will supplement you, and they will take your basic research to the translational point. So it also needs a lot of networking. It needs you to be savvy with interacting with people. It probably needs a different kind of skill. So there is the difference.
This is the last question, ma'am. This is from Karthik. He wants to know that gender inequality is present in Western countries as well. How it is different from that in India?
Not very different. So basically, men have been doing a certain kind of work and women have been doing a certain kind of work. So this has been sort of the benchmark of, what you are good at as a woman or as a man. So it has just so happened that more professionals from the male gender have come in. Difference between West and East, not much. First off, I can say that in the West also, women scientists are mothers. They still have to go through the tantrums of the children. They still have to go through the, tantrums of pre-teens and teens and all that. So, they have to also look after the family. So there, I think it is very, very similar. In our country, the basic difference between Oriental and Occidental culture, and they have also gone through a lot of pain. And I think the wars have sort of shaped their thinking in a slightly different way. In the sense, they had to pull all the human resources together. We have not had, and God forbid, we must not, but we have not had that kind of a need for resource mobilization. Right now, I think, especially the middle class, because of the income parity, more and more women are also going into the work field, especially in the STEMs, because of this need. So I always say that the system auto-corrects itself. So in the West, there are women, they have problems, representation is less. In the East also, maybe more so. So we just have to look at the big picture and maybe not just limit our thinking to STEM, but also look at other areas where women can also are also functioning. For example, I think traditional knowledge would be something that women trained in the formal STEM and people with just a traditional knowledge can collaborate, just girl to girl. And I think that kind of collaboration will probably no longer keep that label on who are there, how many people are going into it, and all that. It's the question of having voice, it's the question of empowerment. So I think that collaboration needs to happen. And Kinkini, we were talking about Sundarban. I think the women there, they have contributed in a big way, not only in preserving the ecosystem, but also thinking of a new way of life, despite the natural calamities. So if the women trained in science and technology were to say, go and talk to the, say, the tiger widows, or the other problem there is loss of land, the river is eating up the land. So that kind of collaboration, I think, can bring parity to what Karthik, you said, Tusha, who had just asked this question.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. Yes.
So I hope that answers his question.
So, coming to the end of the session, we would like to thank our speaker, Dr. NRA Banerjee, once again for enlightening us with her valuable thoughts. We feel extremely privileged to have you, ma'am, for the session. And, ma'am, you were very true in remarking that the inclusion of diversity in STEM can be the change maker. And through this platform, we encourage the inclusion of diversity in the scientific community for transforming lives and economy. Today, we conclude this session with the hope that the audience would try to follow your footprints and bring a change in the society. We also hope that the goals and objectives of this webinar series is moving closer to its fulfillment with every session that we organize. The recording of this webinar and all the previous webinars can be accessed through ISTI YouTube channel. And for more information about upcoming webinars and India's efforts in science, technology, and innovation, kindly visit India Science, Technology, and Innovation portal, ISTI. Thank you, one and all, for your kind presence.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.